claims that we're in the Great Depression here in America. Great headline, huh? How about the content? Unfortunately for all of our friends over in England, they're just wrong. And I'll tell you why in tonight's Real Story. But first, I swear to you, the entire stock market ganged up today and decided to play one giant, April Fool's joke on investors. Because I cannot explain how the stock market rocketed today in the face of the morning news that gas prices are hitting another record high. UBS is announcing another $19 billion in write-downs, along with the resignation of its chairman. The Deutsche Bank is revealing another $3.9 billion in write-downs. And maybe I'm missing the forest through the trees, but the bad news this morning seemed to be irrelevant compared to yesterday's announcement of the most sweeping reform and regulation of the financial sector since the Great Depression. So if that is why the market is so happy, how long is that going to last? I mean, isn't this a little like rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic? Isn't it already too late? Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul is back with us. Giving the Fed, the organization that answers to nobody in our government, more power when they created these bubbles is beyond me, Mr. Paul.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. We do need regulations in all markets. The market itself regulates itself by supply and demand and bad businesses going out of businesses and consumers benefiting when a business does a good deal. But the regulation has to be on government. The regulation has to be on the Federal Reserve. You're absolutely right. The Federal Reserve has so much power, and it's very secretive, and now we're planning on giving it even more. But that's what should be regulated. What we need is a oversight of the Federal Reserve. We have no oversight of monetary policy. They can create all the money they want out of thin air, and that is the creation of the bubble. It causes the malinvestment and the excessive debt, and now they're coming in and they want to regulate the results. It's sort of like putting wage and price controls on once you have inflation, not realizing the inflation comes from the Federal Reserve inflating the money supply.
Okay. I think we're absolutely on the road to nationalism. I mean, we're going to nationalize these banks and this debt. I mean, I don't know how you get out of it. They were saying yesterday, I think it was yesterday in the newspaper I saw, that they're on a road to nationalization the Nordic way. Well, the Nordic way, when they bailed out their banks, they let the stockholders and the shareholders fail. They lose their money. None of these CEOs walked away with any money. That's not what we're doing here. We're talking about bailing out the mortgages and bailing out the banks. Well, what kind of system is that?
No, I think we are on the road to nationalization, but we've already been on that road, and this is just accelerating the pace. Because the large banks especially are in collusion with the Federal Reserve, because once the Federal Reserve creates the high-powered money, the banking system then can further inflate through fractional reserve banking. So they're in cahoots in this whole process.
Congressman, I have to tell you that I find myself increasingly in a place mentally that I just don't want to be. I've never been a conspiracy theorist. I've never been any of these, I've never been a John Bircher or anything. I always thought those people were crazy. But the more you learn and the more you look at history, this weekend I was reading about the crash of 1907 and how that thing was controlled and what came out of that and came to the Fed. I mean, we're repeating the same mistake, and it was always to give these private individuals control, almost a fourth branch of government or a separate tree of our economic system. How do we untangle ourselves from this?
Well, there is no more ominous power than to give this authority to a secret bank to create money out of thin air. And it works as long as people trust the money. But if the money has no backing to it and is not convertible into anything, it eventually ends. And this is what we're witnessing, the beginning of the end of the dollar hegemony. It is going to end because the world is starting to reject it. But no, we need a new monetary system, and it will come. All paper money's self-destruct. And now we're seeing what's happening. They're able to patch it together now and then for decades. Even Bernanke, who's getting a lot of blame now, he didn't create most of these bubbles, and yet he's trying to keep this system that is unsalvageable together by just further inflating. But eventually, we will have to have monetary reform. It is coming, and it's coming quickly.
Congressman, I had David Walker on. I know you know who he is, the head of the GAO, and he said this is a nightmare coming. It's a giant meteor coming, falling out of the sky our way. He said that it'll only be solved by a third party. You're not going to be the Republican candidate. Why don't you run as a third party? You have a lot of support out there.
Well, one reason is that, there's not a whole lot of democracy in this country. In the third party, you really have a tough job. I tried it one time, spent most of my money just trying to get on the ballot. So unless you're Ross Perot, you can't compete. And, you do get marginalized, even if you have non-conventional ideas, you get marginalized even in a major party, as I have been. But right now, I think there's a fertile field out there right now for a third party. There's a lot of frustration and anger and aggravation, and it's a stalemate. I don't see any difference between the three leading candidates right now. We don't know who the Democrats are going to be, and people are starved for some other answers. I agree with you on that.
I have to tell you, I don't agree with everything that you say, but there are a few things that, man, you got it right on and nobody else is saying it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn.
Time to find out where I'm wrong.